We're live, Leader.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the meeting of Cabinet. My name is Jonathan Lester. I'm leader of the council and I will be chairing the meeting. In addition to those councillors present in the room, we have some other councillors joining our meeting. Have we got a, yes, we've got councillors meeting remotely. So in no particular order, we have Councillor Fagan.
Good afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. We can see and hear you. It's nice to see you. We have Councillor Stark.
Good afternoon, everyone. I can see and hear you, Leader.
Excellent. Thank you. And Councillor Crockett.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I can see and hear you.
Excellent. And finally, Councillor Bramer.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for attending remotely. So today we have group leaders or their representatives and scrutiny chairpersons. Well, we've just introduced 3 scrutiny chairpersons who are online, and we have 1 scrutiny chairperson in the room, Councillor Proctor. So I will now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are being made publicly available on Herefordshire Council's website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on Herefordshire Council's YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you're not speaking. Only 1 microphone will be able to be functional at one time. If you have any issues with your microphone, please alert officers and we will allocate a new microphone. Please ensure that all electrical devices are turned to silent, so that's mobile phones, but laptops as well. So others are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If any members of the public attending do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please notify a member of staff. As we move through the agenda, in addition to the discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives to indicate if they wish to provide the views of the group or raise any questions from their group on each item. And also, where appropriate, I will also call on scrutiny chairs to comment on behalf of their committees. Voting will be undertaken by a show of hands in the room. Only Cabinet members physically present in the room may vote. So we have 1 Cabinet member having to attend via the internet, but only those in the room will be voting. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is for apologies for absence. So have we received any apologies?
Just from Councillor James.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? This is agenda item 2. Are there any table A, B, or any other interests for items on the agenda today? No. Okay, agenda item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 20th of January. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Cabinet members, are you content that the minutes of the 20th of January are accurate record and should be signed? That's proposed and seconded. All in favour in the room? Thank you very much. So we now move on to agenda item 4, which is to receive any questions from members of the public. Members of the public have the opportunity to submit questions to Cabinet in writing ahead of the meeting. We have received 9 public questions for this meeting, and the responses have been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those who have submitted a question have been given the opportunity to submit a written supplementary question or to attend the meeting to ask their question live. Supplementary questions are to be no more than 1 minute in length and must include a question. So I will now ask officers to confirm if supplementary questions have been received from members of the public.
We've received 2 written public questions and 1 to be asked in person. If I start with the first written question from Amanda Martin, I'll just bring that up on screen. So the question is for Councillor Price. The request for funding sent by the leader to the Secretary of State for Transport on the 1st of October 2025 explicitly referred to the Southern Link Road as having a robust business case. However, government guidance provides that in order for the business case to be regarded as robust, the transport appraisal used to inform it must include validated traffic data. Failure to observe this requirement renders it inadequate for funding purposes and exposes it to legal challenge. Therefore, there was no robust business case at the time, and the leader's information to the Secretary of State was incorrect. Is it accepted that the leader's attempt to obtain DFT funding relied on misleading information, and that this was a serious lapse likely to cast doubt on his integrity and that of other pro-road members within the administration?
Councillor Bryce, I could answer the question, but seeing it's a bypass-related question, I will yield to you.
Oh, thank you, Leader. It's very kind of you. In reply to your question, is it accepted that the Leader's attempt to obtain DFT funding relied on misleading information? The answer is no. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bryce. Next question, please.
Second question is from Paul Newman, also for Councillor Price. The capital budget is requesting councillors to approve capital funding for a road between the A49 and the A465 and not for the whole Western Bypass scheme. Why is the outline business case for the Southern Link Road claiming benefits that relate to a much bigger road project for which capital approval is not being sought?
Councillor Price, if you could answer the question, please.
I would, Leader, if I could just find it. Just hang on a minute.
You take your time, Councillor Price. No rush.
I don't appear. Can we just come back to this one in a minute, Councillor Leader?
We can do, we can do, but you've got the next supplementary question to answer.
Oh,
So
sorry, I found it. It was
Yep,
on, the,
okay.
on the bottom of my page. Do apologise. So, in answer to the supplementary question, thank you, Mr. Newman. Phase 1 is an enabler for the wider bypass. It clearly demonstrates the Council's commitment to see the full bypass realised and sets the baseline for future discussions with government and developers on how to fund and realise the full bypass. Thank you.
thank you very much, Councillor Price. And the third question is from Mrs. Morawiecka, who's in the room. So I would invite you to come and ask your question from the public gallery, please.
Thank you for the answer, but sadly neither the actual financial split nor the value for money achieved on this 2.456 million expenditure was provided. In the 2026-27 Capital Investment Budget and Capital Strategy Update Report, Para 16 says, inclusion in the capital programme is not approval to proceed. Each project will be subject to its own governance. A full business case will be presented for approval to Cabinet where required and compliance with the Council's contract procedure rules as applicable. With no full business case or other evidence available, what information did the Cabinet have to approve spending 2.456 million to date on the Southern Link Road, and with the capital expense programme showing expenditure on this scheme of 13.5 million in 2026-27, what information is available for councillors to decide that this expenditure is value for money and should be included in the capital programme?
Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Morawiecka. There are several items in that. I will give you a written answer to address all of the points in your question. Thank you.
In view of the budget,
Okay,
will
thank
the
you.
written
Thank
answer
you.
be provided before the full council meeting, because this is important for it to go ahead to councillors?
Yeah, okay. The target for a response is 10 working days. Thank you. And thank you for your question. Right, okay. Agenda item 5 is to receive questions from councillors. We've received 2 questions from councillors for this meeting. I'll now ask officers to read out the supplementary question that I think we've received from Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. The supplementary question from Councillor Taylor is for Councillor Price. Thank you for confirming that the Traffic Modelling Study 2025 is not being withheld. Given that the full council meeting to consider the capital budget is scheduled for the 13th of February 2026, just 8 days away, would the Cabinet member please provide me and other Herefordshire councillors with a copy of the Traffic Modelling Study 2025 in advance of that meeting? This would enable councillors to comply with the council's constitution and the Nolan principles around decision making, and I will have evidence to confirm the claim in the outline business case that spending 45.3 million on a road between the A49 and the A465 for motorised traffic will reduce congestion and journey times in Hereford and free up space for bus services, making them more reliable.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Taylor. As stated previously, and in respect of the funding already approved as part of the budget, the outline business case provides sufficient information for Cabinet to propose approval from Council to add this financial commitment to the capital investment budget. It is not considered that a copy of the Traffic Modelling Study 2025 was required in respect of a decision to approve the additional 28-29 funding for this scheme in the capital investment budget. Importantly, Council agreeing the budget is not approval to spend. Additional governance will be required, which will include Cabinet decisions supported by a full business case before any further progress is made or spend committed. Cabinet has also been clear that the further modelling that has been referred to has not yet been published. It is the intention to publish this in due course. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Taylor, and the answer, Councillor Price. Next question is from Councillor Hitchener, but seeing as he's in the room, he can ask his question in person.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This concerns Hoople. Your answer didn't really answer my particular question. You referred to exploring opportunities for savings and efficiencies at Hoople, which probably means reducing fees with a consequent almost inevitable reduction of service levels. You also refer to a service level agreement. Given the past history, is he able to confirm that a service level agreement exists for the current 25-26 year? So far as going forward is concerned, it's very helpful if service level agreements can be put in place before the beginning of the year in a contract, and surely this should be happening at this time. So maybe he would be able to confirm to the next shareholder meeting, shareholder committee meeting, that a new service level agreement for next year is in place. As asked in my question, is Hoople taking advantage of the opportunities? He refers to Hoople having a wider growth strategy. I look forward to hearing about this at the next shareholder committee meeting, because I believe the council is missing out on opportunities for working at other councils and also with the NHS. This requires investment rather than cost cutting. Perhaps the leader may wish to comment.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Hitchener. Yes, making sure that Hoople has the right strategy, it's a great company, and making sure that they are moving forward and progressing as a company, a key company for Herefordshire to provide services for Herefordshire people. We want that to continue and improve, and we will work with them as best we can to ensure that they're going in the right direction there. Obviously, also a good partnership, working relationship with Hoople addresses the savings that we need to make. So all of those actions will continue to take place. And with regard to the service level agreement, as you suggest, we will report back at the next shareholder meeting. Thank you. Okay, thank you for those questions from both members of the public and from councillors. It's really important that members of the public and councillors can feel that they can ask questions at Cabinet, and some of those questions can be quite complex, which is why we reserve the right to provide some written answers now and again. but they will be forthcoming as soon as possible. The next item on the agenda is reports from scrutiny committees. So the Scrutiny Management Board had a scrutiny meeting on the 23rd of January, chaired by Councillor Proctor, the chair of the Scrutiny Management Board. And that meeting, I think it's safe to say we had a really good, frank discussion covering the whole budget, both the revenue and the capital budgets. And the meeting was sufficient time for them to mull over quite a lot of the issues that were put forward in the budget. And so there are recommendations there, but I will ask Councillor Proctor, as he's here in person, if he would like to make any statements, comments, and take us through the recommendations, if he so chooses. Thank you. Councillor Proctor, floor is yours.
Thank you. I have a few words just to highlight. Obviously, we've sent in our recommendations. This is just to highlight some of the key issues that SNB explored that form the background to those recommendations. So those will cover the context of the budget, risk, relationship between capital and revenue, and the impact of the budget. So it's a very challenging context. The unfair funding review has placed the council in a very difficult position, and it is falling more strongly on Herefordshire than it is on many local authorities. In addition, Herefordshire is sharing budget pressures with all local authorities around home to school transport and DSG, and SNB will be receiving a briefing on home to school transport actions, and we'll have a report for scrutiny on the DSG deficit action plan shortly. Cabinet has approached the funding challenge rationally. £10 million of mitigation in this year will have to be found next year, but I think trying to find £30 million of recurring savings in this year would have been unrealistic. The budget papers were very clear, as you would expect from an award-winning team in that area. The directorate position statements, I think, are a very positive innovation. The savings details paper that was prepared for SNB was really helpful, and I think should become normal practice, given we are in a world where we will be proposing savings year after year. We made a series of other recommendations around improvements that we could see in reporting, and we're disappointed that those were not accepted, but we will no doubt return to those in due course. We looked and talked to the Cabinet about the risk associated with the delivery of the savings for next year. £20 million of recurring savings is twice as much as the council has ever delivered in year. It's good that the Cabinet thinks that £7 million can be found from the 1st of April, but there's still a lot of work to be done on the remaining £13 million, and all scrutiny committees will be working with the Cabinet to ensure these savings can be delivered. But there is a risk that not all savings will be delivered. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but there is obviously a risk, and any savings not delivered will roll into future years, along with the £10 million mitigation and potentially some other mitigations. So if the use of the contract inflation reserve, that might roll into future years as well. SNB believes that the medium-term financial strategy can be an even more useful tool to help the council develop and implement strategy, which is why we would like to see more explicit use of scenario planning in the medium term. We heard in the meeting that no other council has used scenario planning in its medium-term financial strategy, but that does not necessarily make it a bad idea. Cabinet has taken a range of different approaches to what we might call transformation or changes in the way it does business over the past few years. In the current or the draft MTFS, the key areas of focus for the council's future financial strategy seem sensible, but they need considerably more fleshing out. Cabinet could not articulate any additional investment that will be made in order to deliver this future financial strategy, but SNB members, I think, accept that more work needs to be done around that area. And we made a recommendation around timescale for this, which was not accepted, but I don't think we're actually very far from the Cabinet on this. We strongly encourage Cabinet to develop this strategy rapidly in consultation with partners across the county, and Scrutiny will be very happy to assist. SNB has long encouraged Cabinet to make use of the capital programme to offset revenue pressures, and we're pleased that in the proposed capital programme there are investments that will offset revenue growth or reduce revenue costs. This does increase the risk associated with the delay to capital projects, because a delay to a capital project will then have an impact on the revenue budget in the medium term. Council has more choices within the capital programme than it does within the revenue budget, though prudential borrowing is constrained by the revenue position. And the impact of this is that when the council decides to fund a project through prudential borrowing, there's an opportunity cost for the other things it cannot then fund through prudential borrowing. Cabinet has made political choices in the capital programme, and these will be debated, I'm sure, today and at council. It set itself a huge task in terms of the scale of the capital programme for next year, and all scrutiny committees will be very interested in ensuring that this can be delivered. And finally, SNB has a long-standing position that the council should be better at showing the links between the capital programme, the revenue budget and service delivery, and ultimately the outcomes we're delivering with partners in the county. In previous years, we've made recommendations that a draft delivery plan should be presented alongside the draft budget. We didn't make it this year, but that recommendation stands. We still think that that is a very good idea, and without it, we know how much we're paying for the services, but not the impact that those services have on the people we represent. It becomes even more important to make this link as we navigate this latest round of austerity. I look forward to the debate at Cabinet today and at Council next week.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor, and I just once again like to extend my thanks to the SNB, the Scrutiny Management Board, for taking such time and effort to consider all of the financial challenges and the budget picture that we've been presented with due to the unfair allocation of funding for local government and the pressures that this council faces financially. But I take it that, you know, from the recommendations that we have, and I will ask Councillor Stoddart to comment on the recommendations in due course, but in view of the fact that the recommendations as they are focused on how the council ensures that the management of the finances is done as best as possible, then there is confidence that the budget proposals that we put forward are sound given the challenges that we face. So, Councillor Stoddart, you're next to speak with regard to the next item on the agenda. Did you want to sort of like roll in your comments with your comments about the overall financial strategy and budget before us, or did you want to comment separately about the recommendations that have been put before Cabinet?
Well, thank you. I'd just like to echo your comments and on behalf of myself and Rachel, thank the SNB for their positive and contribution that we had a couple of Fridays ago on the 23rd of January. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So those recommendations are acknowledged and we have our responses to them. So we'll move straight on to, unless any Cabinet members got any comments about the recommendations, if we move straight to the agenda item 7, and that is one of the substantive items on the agenda, which is the final recommendation, final proposal for the budget, the medium-term financial strategy and the treasury management strategy for 26-27, which will be presented to Herefordshire Council's full council meeting next Friday. So the item begins on page 11 of a very thick agenda pack. And I would look forward to Councillor Stoddart addressing this item now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. When I introduced the 2026-27 draft revenue budget to Cabinet on the 20th of January, I mentioned that this was a draft budget and that I would provide information on our consultation with council members, council scrutiny committees, local businesses and the public when I spoke next. I can confirm that we have conducted wide-ranging regular briefings to share information on the potential outcome of the Fair Funding Review and its impact on the Council's revenue budget and capital programmes. These have been delivered to group leaders, and their political groups, scrutiny committee members, council employees and members of the public throughout the 2026-27 budget development process. The Council invited residents and stakeholders to consider funding choices and the impact of changes in income and expenditure on the delivery of services through an online budget consultation. Engagement also asked for feedback on priorities for the 2026 budget and council tax increase options. And this consultation ran from the 9th of December 2025 to the 4th of January 2026. In total, we had 359 responses from residents and businesses, and the summary report is included at Appendix F to this report. This represents an increase in engagements from the 201 online responses we had in financial year 2025-26, and we will consider on how to build on this activity to maximise engagement in future years. Respondents were asked how comfortable they would be with a reduction in spending across 13 key services. The results highlight that respondents were not comfortable with reductions in highways maintenance and street lighting, and that this support was also reflected in respondents' views on which single service they would prioritise if they only had £1 left to spend, with highways maintenance and street lighting as the most common choice. There was very strong support for selling and developing the council's assets and developing online services over reducing services in order to balance the budget. This supports the planned activity as part of our future financial strategy to maximise commercial income and improve and transform services by using both technology and digital tools. A majority of respondents supported increases in charges for services for non-statutory services, and increasing income from fees and charges is one of the savings proposals themes for 26-27, with £1.8 million proposed in this area. At the Scrutiny Management Board at their meeting on the 23rd of January, Cabinet members provided additional information and assurance on the savings proposals and measures to balance the budget. I would like to thank them for their work and their recommendations, and Cabinet's responses to these recommendations are included in this report in front of you today at Appendix G. The provisional settlement announced by Central Government on the 19th of December duly confirmed the impact of the Fair Funding Review 2, and we await confirmation of the final settlement in the next few days, which is expected on Monday, the 9th of February. The balanced draft revenue budget that is proposed for 2026-27 totals £234.1 million and includes a 4.99% increase in total council tax increases. This increases the Band D equivalent charge to £2,067.63, representing an increase of £8.19 per month or £1.89 per week. To manage rising costs and demand for services alongside reductions in the Council's allocation of funding from Central Government via the Fair Funding Review, the draft revenue budget includes savings proposals of £20 million, measures to manage directorate inflationary pressures via a centrally held contract inflation fund, and £3.2 million proposed use of business rates risk reserve to mitigate the reduction in the Council's funding allocation in 2026-27. Nationally, local authorities continue to face significant financial pressures, whilst demand and cost of statutory services continues to rise, increasing the challenge of delivering transformation and improvements in the delivery of services for residents and businesses across Herefordshire. The proposed budget and strategy for 26-27 builds on the prudent approach and robust financial management that is now embedded across the Council to protect and preserve the Council's future financial resilience and sustainability through robust and reliable management of the revenue budget and capital programme, together with delivery of realistic, achievable and recurrent savings on time and in full. A sustainable financial strategy has been developed for 2026-27 and onwards to ensure that the Council can achieve an ambitious programme of investment, service improvements and transformation to deliver the best for Herefordshire. Government calculations of the increase in core spending power for Herefordshire highlight an increase of £13.4 million in CSP over the settlement period. This increase assumes the council will increase council tax in line with the maximum permitted increase of 5% in each of the 3 years of the multi-year settlement. However, this headline from government is misleading, with a total of £17.3 million being reduced in Herefordshire's allocation of central government funding following redistribution through the Fair Funding Review compared with the 2025-26 baseline levels. This means that the estimated increase in CSP, as calculated by government, is expected to be funded entirely by local taxpayers via maximum annual increases in council tax, as the Settlement Funding Assessment, or SFA, drops from £88.4 million this financial year to 84.1 in 26-27, 77.7 in 27-28, and then finally to 71.1 million pounds in 28-29. This latest reduction in funding further compounds the financial pressures already faced by the council following the abolition of the Rural Services Delivery Grant and Service Delivery Grant, which led to loss of funding of £7.1 million in 2025-26. The analysis prepared by the Rural Services Network highlights how the council's funding per head will be impacted by the provisional settlement. This analysis highlights that whilst urban authorities can expect a significant increase in government funding per head compared with indexed 24-25 funding, and English local authorities will receive 118% by 2028-29, the analysis shows the position for rural authorities with a minimal increased funding per head of 103% by 28-29, and Herefordshire's position as drastically disadvantaged by the outcome of the Fair Funding Review, where we will receive 77% by 28-29. Initial assessments by the RSN, comparing the most rural with the most urban councils, indicates that most urban councils are expected to receive excuse me, around 41% more per head in government funding spending power than the most rural councils in 26-27. In 26-27, residents in the most rural areas are projected to pay around 20% more in council tax on average than most urban residents. By 28-29, the most urban rural authorities' spending power is expected to allow them to spend around £100 more per resident on services than the most rural councils. Between 24-25 and 28-29, government-funded spending power for the most urban rural authorities is expected to rise by around 21%, compared with around 1% for the most rural councils. And finally, by 28-29, these changes would result in the most urban councils having around 8% more spending power than the most rural councils. The outcome of the Fair Funding Review has therefore serious implications for the council's funding position and delivery of services and improvements to residents over the medium-term period. This is the real outcome of the Fair Funding Review for the residents of Herefordshire: a reduction in government funding and less resources to spend on services which benefit residents. However, I would like to draw your attention to the recent announcement by Birmingham City Council, which previously was bankrupt, and that states that its financial position for 26-27 will now be balanced and services are set for £130 million of additional investment. And I think that is a very clear demonstration of the true impact of what Fair Funding Review's move of funding from rural to urban authorities will demonstrate. I'd now like to explain how our income is derived, and the table at paragraph 36 of the report shows this clearly, but also shows how we're unable to compare like with like in respect of last year's due to the significant changes in this year's fair funding allocation as against last year's legacy funding, with many grants all being rolled into the council settlement funding assessment. In the financial year 25-26, government agreed to provide exceptional financial support, or EFS, to 30 councils to manage their financial pressures and budget gaps. There was 19 in 24-25, 8 in 23-24 and 5 in 22-23. Of these 30, 6 had previously issued a Section 114 notice, which is often referred to as a bankruptcy notice. EFS is a form of temporary financial assistance to support a council to meet its financial obligations and to continue to deliver essential services. The EFS framework allows councils to cover day-to-day running costs by borrowing or through the use of capital receipts generated from the sale of assets. Councils granted EFS may also be given may also be given dispensation to increase council tax rates above the referendum threshold without a local referendum. The corporate peer review confirmed that Herefordshire Council is a good council that is striving hard to improve further, with strong financial stewardship, and that this Cabinet has chosen to take some tough but responsible decisions to balance the budget rather than opt for loans from government through EFS, which is a form of temporary financial assistance to support the council meet its financial obligations. At paragraph 66 in the report, the process for EFS is explained. However, in simple terms, EFS is the equivalent of maximising your credit card, as it is only a short-term measure which will accrue interest and will require to be paid back to central government. A neighbouring county council has last year received £30 million and is applying for a further £70 million in 26-27, giving them a debt of £100 million, which will be subjected to annual interest of approximately 5.9%, and which, unlike prudential borrowing for capital projects, which then provides you with an asset, EFS is a short-term fix that only enables services to be delivered on the never-never. I can reconfirm today that Herefordshire Council, unlike some other councils, will not be seeking a bailout or government loan or calling for 10% council tax increases. However, what we will do is take tough but responsible decisions to control costs, protect essential services, and keep the council financially sustainable. I would now like to address the base budget proposed for 2026-27, which is summarised at paragraph 65 in the report. Directorate savings proposals are detailed at Appendix B, and key revenue budget pressures, challenges and risks are outlined in the individual directorate budget position statements at Appendix C. The budget for community and wellbeing is set at £89.667 million, which is a reduction from this year of £700,000. Children and young people's budget is £58.413 million, which is a reduction from this year of £460,000. Economy and environment is £38.291 million, a reduction from this year of £2.7 million. Corporate services is £22.496 million, which is a small increase from this year of £274,000 due to increases in insurance premiums and banking charges. And central finance area is £25.253 million, an increase from this year of £6.2 million due to increased interest payments linked to the DSG deficit and capital programme. The key budget pressures for 26-27, which total £29.3 million, are included in the draft revenue budget for 26 by directorate and are as follows: the pay award, inflation and demand. This year, we have made the decision to deal with inflation differently through the establishment of the Contract Inflation Fund to be managed via our existing expenditure controls. Inflation is estimated at £7.1 million in contracts for expenditure on supplies, services and third-party payments, which will not this year be allocated directly to services as an increase in directorate base budgets. Each directorate has been set a target to manage inflationary pressures within their own individual directorate budgets. And this centrally managed contract inflation fund, which will be established in 26-27 to manage inflationary increases which cannot be managed directly within directorate budgets, with amounts transferred to directorates through existing expenditure control processes when evidence of need has been clearly demonstrated. The draft revenue budget also assumes funding of £3.2 million from the Business Rates Risk Reserve. The Community Wellbeing Directorate is facing significant pressures in 2026-27 due to rising complexity of care needs, an ageing population, higher demand for temporary accommodation, and increasing numbers of residents unable to fund their own care because of inflation and cost of living impacts. The budget reflects these growing cost pressures, including increased demand for more complex care needs, inflation affecting both general services and health and social care contracts. And then to manage these challenges, the Directorate plans to control costs, better manage demand, increase income, and work with specialist partners to design and implement long-term transformation and efficiency improvements informed by detailed diagnostic work. The Children and Young People's Directorate received £10.8 million in additional funding for financial year 24-25. And that's been supported by a multi-year financial plan focused on workforce stability and reducing expensive placements. Over the period 24-25 to 26-27, the Directorate has delivered or proposed £9.8 million in savings, including £6.4 million achieved in the first 2 years and further efficiencies planned through reduced agency staffing and reshaped services. An underspend of £2.7 million in 24-25 shows the Directorate has successfully reduced its base budget, and any future savings from 27-28 onward will form part of wider council savings plans, all of which whilst achieving an Ofsted grade of good and outstanding for management, for which I think we all have to recognise to Tina and Councillor Powell outstanding work. Herefordshire Council's growing dedicated schools grant, or DSG deficit, is temporarily ring-fenced under a statutory override until March 2028, preventing it from affecting the Council's ability to set a balanced budget. At 1 April 2025, the cumulative deficit brought forward was £20 million. And the Q2, or September 2025, forecast reports an overspend of £17.5 million within the high needs block of the DSG, increasing the cumulative deficit to £37.5 million by 31 March 2026. A focused review to quantify the impact of emerging demand in 26-27 and future years is currently underway to inform the Council's DSG deficit management plan. Measures to contain the deficit and mitigate future cost and demand pressures continue to be managed by the service through the DSG deficit management plan, and the financial impact of agreed mitigations will be monitored and reported throughout the year as part of the Council's routine budget monitoring processes. I'd now like to turn to the area of Economy and Environment Directorate. This will be sufficiently resourced to support growth in the economy in 26-27 and the delivery of major and capital projects. The Directorate will embed the new operating model for public realm services and will continue to manage pressures in the operation of waste collection and disposable contracts arising due to growth in the volume of domestic waste and inflationary increases in the unitary payments. Savings proposed for 26-27 of £7.2 million will be achieved by maximising commercial activity and returns from traded services to increase income, managing demand by increased engagement with communities and partners, and delivering efficiencies by maximising the application of grant funding. These proposals are detailed in the Economy and Environment 26-27 Directorate Budget Position Statement, which is attached to Appendix C to this report in front of you today. The provisional settlement notes that Government intends to set out plans to reform the SEND system in further detail early this year. Ahead of any substantial reform, the Council must continue to manage increasing demand and cost pressures in transport services by identifying innovative strategies to influence demand using data to better understand user requirements, maximise independence and reduce reliance on council transport services, and then finally employ digital technologies to maximise opportunities to consolidate routes and to deliver efficient journeys. Turning now to corporate services, the budget requirement for 26-27 reflects investment in the Corporate Services Directorate to support continued delivery of service improvements and transformation across the Council. I'm very pleased to remind my colleagues that, as I stated on the 20th of January, following lobbying by a number of ward members, the corporate services budget now includes an allocation of £1,000 per ward member, which can be allocated to community groups and projects within their ward area across this current financial year. However, it must align to the priorities of the council plan. I can confirm that the full details of how this will be managed will be issued in the very near future. Transformation expenditure in the Corporate Services Directorate will be mitigated in 26-27 through the application of £0.6 million of capital receipts, and this application is permitted by statutory direction, and the Council is required to evidence compliance with qualifying conditions to its external auditors. The qualifying expenditure will generate efficiencies, ongoing savings and reductions in the cost of service delivery, and the proposed allocation in 26-27 represents a modest use of this flexibility by the Council. The central budget comprises financial transactions, minimum revenue provision and other corporate budget items including pension costs, costs in respect of administration of housing benefit and council tax, business rates collections and income from the Council's business rate pooling arrangements. This budget is informed by planned delivery of the Council's capital programme, the Council's Treasury Management Strategy, routine cash flow monitoring and external borrowing requirement. I would now like to turn and address the issue of savings. Council approved a total of £19.5 million of savings in the 24-25 revenue budget. In the year ended 31 March 2025, 10.9 million or 56% of those approved savings have been delivered. Savings not delivered recurrently in previous years have been carried forward into 25-26 for continued monitoring of delivery, and at Q2 or September 2025, 51% of the total savings have been delivered, with a further 40% assessed as on target for delivery, and the balance of the 9% assessed to be at risk. Total savings of £20 million are proposed in this 2026-27 budget, and these savings include a range of proposals to control costs of service delivery, increase income from fees and charges, manage demand from council services in high-cost demand-led budgets, and deliver efficiencies through review and transformation of services. Details of individual proposals and a description of planned activity for Directorate savings are included in Appendix B and in individual Directorate budget position statements at Appendix C. I'm very pleased to state today that 35% or £6.9 million of these savings are estimated to be delivered on the 1st of April this year. Thus, there are only 65% to be delivered across the remaining period of the year. The process to identify savings for 26-27 included a review of discretionary preventive, enabling and mandatory services and the level of service provision by reference to legislative and regulatory requirements. This review considered options to stop, reduce or identify alternative funding sources for non-mandatory services, opportunities for savings and efficiencies in services with cost pressures, and options to increase income generated from services where permitted. Delivery of savings at a time of increasing demand and budget pressures remains a significant challenge for this Council. The challenging savings targets set and the difficult decisions taken to deliver efficiencies in both services and the size and shape of the Council form the basis of the Council's future financial strategy, which is to enable a financially stable and resilient Council. This strategy is underpinned by robust financial management and continued expenditure controls, accuracy in forecasting, and the effective collaboration between service and financial teams. Our strenuous measures to address these savings are part of a robust financial system which is supported by our valuable external auditors. The Auditor's Annual Report for 24-25 notes that there are no significant weaknesses in respect of arrangements for financial planning, alignment of financial plans to other operational planning, and in identifying and managing risks to our financial resilience. These arrangements, assessed by external audit, underpin the 2026-27 budget setting process to support the preparation of a realistic, balanced budget. I would also like to highlight that in our latest external audit report, all of the financial planning measures are green. Furthermore, Herefordshire Council continues to be one of the first local authorities in the country to publish its audited financial accounts, which provides valuable assurance on the accuracy of our figures and financial arrangements ahead of budget setting. The impact of all these savings proposals has been considered, and these are documented in the equality impact assessments, which have also been published as part of the report at Appendix H. I'd now like to turn to the medium-term financial strategy. The medium-term financial strategy, or MTFS, is the Council's key financial planning document and sets out the Council's budget for 2026-27 and the financial plan for the next 3 years out to 2029-30. I would like to highlight that this is a high-level document of our planned income and expenditure out to 2030 based on what we know today. Table 1 shows an estimated cumulative funding gap of £83.418 million over the medium-term financial planning period. I would like to highlight that this gap is in no way due to any actions by Herefordshire Council. Rather, this gap is singularly due to the impact of the Unfair Funding Review 2. Herefordshire Council, however, has a statutory requirement to set a balanced budget for 2027-28, and thus the gap of £20.571 million has to be addressed at that time. Thus, when the 27-28 funding gap has been resolved as part of the budget setting process, the impact will be that the 28-29 expenditure requirement reduces and the gap for 29-30 reduces to approximately £11 million. We're fully aware that closing the estimated funding gap in future years will represent a significant challenge and will be the immediate focus for the financial staff and myself from April 26 as part of the Council's future financial strategy. The key areas of focus and activity will include maximising commercial income from the Council's asset base, collaboration with external specialist partners to deliver efficiencies in high-cost, high-demand areas of service delivery, review of the Council's relationships with its subsidiary companies, creating a lean and resilient Council through workforce reviews to determine the future size and scope of the organisation, use of benchmarking to compare operating costs, working with sector-led experts to identify inefficiencies and opportunities to reduce expenditure, investing in the data and digital infrastructure to deliver long-term efficiencies, improvements and transformation in services for residents, and lastly, manageable and will be resolved in future years through continued transformation. The Treasury Management Strategy at Appendix D has been prepared to comply with all relevant guidance and legislation, and the borrowing strategy is that the Council borrows to fund capital expenditure, with borrowing driven by the requirements of the approved capital investment budget. The objective of the borrowing strategy is to manage the risk of current and potential future debt. The current loan debt of £135.5 million is detailed at Annex A. The objective of the investment strategy, missing some pages. The objective of this investment strategy is to ensure prudence is applied and risks are managed when the Council holds surplus funds, that is, income received in advance of expenditure. As at 31 October 2025, the Council had £55.74 million of investments spread across banks, other local authorities and money market funds, and the current investment portfolio is detailed at Annex A. A prudent estimate is assumed as part of budget setting for 26-27, and income achieved above this budgeted value will be reported once the flow of economic benefit to the Council is probable, i.e. at a quarter end as in previous years and in line with accounting principles. And finally, the earmarked reserves at Appendix E show that our forecast reserves as at 31 March 2026 will be £75.3 million. In conclusion, and in bearing in mind the context of the wider poor economic situation that surrounds us, I would like to remind Cabinet today that we have achieved a deliverable balanced budget of £234.1 million. that our medium-term financial strategy shows that whilst we have challenges ahead in order to be able to deliver balanced budgets over the 4-year period of the strategy, and finally, that we are managing financial risks and monitoring reserves. This is a situation that I believe many other local authorities in the land would wish to find themselves in. And therefore, I have no hesitation in recommending this draft budget and request that Cabinet approve all 8 recommendations, plus the proposal for allocation if additional funding is received. Thank you, Lou.
Well, thank you, Councillor Stoddard, for a very comprehensive report in highlighting all of the strategic approaches to dealing with the shortfall in funding and the challenges that we face. Lots of strategies there to address the situation, make sure that we're delivering a balanced budget. Cabinet members, I've got a few questions for Councillor Stoddard, but any comments about the budget proposals? I know it's fresh in your memories from the 20th of January, but we have other points to raise. Councillor Hercombe.
I'd just like to, 2 questions really. One is more of a statement, is to just reiterate my thanks for including funding for the parish council schemes. I said last time they're vitally important, and we've had some good feedback from parishes that we're continuing those. And the second question, at the last Cabinet meeting, the leader and the Cabinet member confirmed that we would introduce a pop and shop scheme delivering 30 minutes free in all council-owned car parks from April. While this decision has been universally welcomed by businesses and residents, in light of the additional feedback we've received, will the leader consider extending the free 30-minute offer to include on-street parking in Hereford City as well?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Stoddard. And sorry, Hercombe. I'll look to Councillor Stoddard in a minute, but yes, I really like the fact that we've had extremely positive feedback about the pop and shop facility. It acknowledges that traders really benefit from that footfall, and anything we can do to induce more footfall for the traders that benefit from free parking is a great thing. Obviously, at the moment, we have market towns where there is free parking for a period of time, so that they've already got their pop and shop built in to the market towns. But then, of course, there is that charge for residents in Hereford right in the centre of the city. So in order to be fair and to, benefit, and for traders to benefit from a pop and shop type experience, then I think it would be only fair to make sure that that pop and shop is for Hereford residents in the centre of the city where that parking charge is applied. So in the interest of fairness, I think we should have pop and shop on the streets of Hereford as well, where there are charges, and so I think we should extend that, and we'll make that part of the policy that's rolled out when the programme starts. Councillor Durkin, I'm looking to you for when it will start.
It starts in April.
Yeah, okay then, so we'll make that start from April in Hereford as well. Excellent. Okay. Any questions from Cabinet to Councillor Stoddard? Councillor Stoddard, we said we'd cover the scrutiny recommendations in this substantive item, if you like. The 5 recommendations before us, I mean, without going through every single one, we've got, say, for example, the first recommendation is no action required. That doesn't mean to say that the executive or yourself and Cabinet colleagues have dismissed that at all. The point is, that's a really good point to raise, but the activity is already planned anyway?
Yes, Leader. So in relation to the point that Councillor Proctor mentioned, where we're not doing it, I think it's been slightly incorrect there, because actually what we're already doing it, and that's the point we've said there's no action required to be taken because we're already taking those actions. His point about scenario planning is what we are doing is we're doing sensitivity analysis. So what Rachel and her team do is they will look at a couple of measures and see what an impact of 1%, 2%, 3% will go into there. So it's not full scenario planning is about a full scenario of what's the impact of a change of inflation of 8%, and you do through all that. That's what, as we explained, we cannot find any evidence of any other councils across England who are doing that. And therefore, in our estimation, that's a lot of effort that obviously best practice is not being done. Whereas what we are doing is we do, for things that actually matter to us, we look at the sensitivity analysis, and we will change, and we can make, we will at the next SMB demonstrate to them a couple of examples of what the sensitivity analysis does to hopefully address that work. But I would again like to go and thank the SMB for their work. It was a valuable 3 hours. I think some people might not have enjoyed it. I class it back as being almost look back at being tactical questioning in the army, but it's vital in a democracy as we live that we are held accountable on all of our actions, and that's what we wish to do.
And Councillor Stoddard, I think the misconception would be that we create the medium-term financial strategy, and once that document is created, we then stick it in a drawer and forget about it. We're constantly tweaking this document so that we've got the most up-to-date information. And so, okay, the disagreement about whether you should have scenario planning or not, but I think we just want to be absolutely categorical in saying that the document is a live document, it's updated as and when, and the sensitivities of the financial position are tested constantly as we move through the picture. So it's a dynamic assessment of the market, the medium-term financial strategy, rather than a desktop exercise that we just put on the shelf and then revisit later on down the line.
Very, very much so, Leader. I fully agree with what you're saying there. As I explained in my text, it is a high-level financial planning document that is best is known at the date and the time when we publish it. We keep it under regular review. It is a tool that we use. And I would refer back to the CPC report, who actually said that their initial thoughts were that our MTFS was a bit optimistic, but they then changed their final comments to say that our MTFS was based on realistic and good value. And that's why, in the openness in which we operate, we have shown the worst possible case scenario for the MTFS over the next 4 years, and it shows a balance, or a negative balance of £89.5 million. But as I explained in my text this afternoon, what that doesn't do, that's based on no actions taking place. When we have to, and we have a legal requirement to balance that budget for 27-28, the cumulative action of doing that impacts all the way through and ends up with that 89 or 88 million dropping to 11 million. So it's a it's still significant figures, but it shows the actions that we're doing, and we will constantly be watching this, and we will look to provide quarterly briefs to Cabinet on the MTFS as we go through.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddard. And just to clarify the point about the proposed report of recommendation 4, the executive should report separately savings, initiatives, funding from reserves and grants. So we are setting out how those sums of money are being allocated individually, are we not?
So in the third report that I'll present this afternoon, we'll talk through the review of earmarked reserves, and we'll talk through that as we go through. And any significant changes in that sort of situation, we will report at our quarterly briefing reports to Cabinet to make you all aware as we go through.
And then finally, recommendation 5 is about reporting of the income and expenditure at a subdirectorate level. So the response is that the Cabinet will review the format. So we're going to look at the way we present that. Is that correct?
Yep. So again, it's a sort of one of the things that Councillor Proctor has mentioned a few times in reference to our performance reports is that he would like to see it output based. I explained that we are looking to do that. I can confirm to him that myself and Rachel met with Jessica, the responsible officer, last week, and we've now got a format that we're looking at that we'll be looking to put into Q1 for the 26-27 report, which ties into the outputs. So you can do that squaring of the circle as we go through.
Thank you. And Councillor Stoddard, you said that the final settlement will be announced on the 9th of February. Is that correct? So given that the final settlement hasn't been announced, would you agree with me that government should reconsider the funding formulae that has driven the distribution of funding to ensure that Herefordshire Council, they should reassess it so that they should ensure that Herefordshire Council receives a fairer funding allocation that reflects the additionality of delivering those services in a rural area.
Very much so. However, pragmatism means that I don't think we will. Rachel and the Chief Executive have spoken with MCLHG, and they've made us aware that we're not expecting any real changes. But I do think, and the example I brought up earlier on, where I talked about Birmingham City Council, which was previously a Labour-run council, which was bankrupt and was running out of money, now has suddenly got an additional £130 million to... Sorry?
Sorry, go ahead.
£130 million of additional fund for services, I think shows the Labour government's demonstration of their plan to move allocation of funding from rural counties to urban authorities. And I think there's the evidence. But we will continue to work on it, and it is one of our plans will be, as I've mentioned a number of times in this room, we have to look. We've got our 3 funding streams: council tax, business rates, and then funding from central government. It's only going to get less. I mentioned earlier that in the MTFS it drops by about £17 million, and therefore we have to look for other things. And tied into that will be the development of our growth corridor, which will provide housing, businesses, which will then increase our council tax base, our business rates, and so on and so forth. So that's tied into that. So we're looking at that for the long-term future of Herefordshire.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoddard. Sorry for all those extra questions, but I think it is a final opportunity for this administration to ask government to reconsider about the fairer funding. If it truly, truly is fairer funding, it should be done so accordingly, taking into account all of the challenges that councils face, especially councils with low council tax bases and rurality, which costs more. So a plea to government yet again to be fairer with their funding. And with that fairer funding, if it was fair, you would be assisting a well-run council in delivering good services for its residents. Councillor Hurcombe.
I was at a parish council meeting on Tuesday night, and the chairman pointed out to me this is the 15th consecutive year of government cuts on local government. And it's remarkable to me that this government came in and promised the end of austerity. Yet I think, and the Cabinet Member for Finance will confirm, this is the single biggest saving target that Herefordshire Council has ever had to make in 1 year. So much for the end of austerity. We're actually facing a worse situation under this government.
Austerity for rural authorities, not for urban.
Quite. There's a sobering thought. Right. Okay. So thank you for that, Cabinet. We have group leaders. Councillor James is not here, but Councillor Proctor is in his place, so he's very welcome. He has 2 hats to wear today. But I open the floor to group leaders in no particular order. I must also just double check, is Councillor Davis with us, or she had to drop off the line? Okay, well, if Councillor Davis does come back online, I will make sure that she's able to speak if she has any comments. Right, okay, so if not, open the floor to other group leaders, and the group leaders who have the opportunity to speak are actually in the room. So, Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Stoddart, for yet another bravura performance there. I do hope that that indicates we'll hear possibly somewhat less from you when it comes to the full council debate on the budget, seeing as I think feels like we've heard this about 12 times now. But great stuff. Thank you. And I just wanted to query one thing that you said particularly about a piece of new information that we've got before us today, which is the response to the public consultation on the budget. I'd like to ask what level of engagement you would consider to meet your ambition that public engagement in budget consultation has been maximised, given that this year's level of engagement equates to less than 0.2% of the county's population. And I'll leave you mulling on that, while I go on and say, I note that the consultation shows that nearly 60% of the respondents live in council tax banded properties below the base property tax band of Band D. Now, it's just been mentioned, the current Labour government has continued the previous 14 years of Tory policy to maximise the amount of local government funding coming from increased local taxation. And Herefordshire continues to be a low-wage economy, with the average and median wages exhibiting little improvement in recent times. And I've been advised that this council does not track the proportion of the average wage that council tax represents for residents. Therefore, no one has been able to tell me to what extent the relentless uplift of council tax to the maximum allowed is impacting on the total, or perhaps more importantly, on the disposable income of local people. So, does the Cabinet member have a view on when it will not be viable for this council to continue to maximise the increase in local taxation burden placed on Herefordshire residents to reduce the gap in funding provision for council services provided by central government?
Okay, thank you very much. Any more comments, Councillor Harvey?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, right. I'll move to Councillor Simmons. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank again our Chief Financial Officer, her team, the corporate directors and staff who've clearly worked so hard to present a balanced budget to Cabinet and onto Council, especially after Labour's government's entirely unfair funding settlement. The Green Group joined with this administration, our colleagues in other parties and the Rural Services Network in demanding that government urgently rethinks its fair funding settlement. This year is challenging enough to achieve a balanced budget, but the gap in funding is only growing year on year. By the end of the settlement in 29-30, we will be in an incredibly precarious position. We cannot continue these levels of cuts to our directorates. And it cannot be right, as has been said, that the rural areas like ours, subject to a low-wage economy and geographical peripherality, continue to lose this funding on top of the delivery of rural services grant lost last year. Rural areas like ours, as Peter said, are receiving 41% less funding per capita than urban areas, and that is having a huge, lasting, damaging effect on the most vulnerable in our county, the old and the young. The reduction in our reserves required to fill these gaps is not sustainable, and it places us in an increasingly precarious position and unable to weather, literally, the significant economic risks coming from climate change. And we really need to have an understanding of what's coming down the line towards us and how on earth we're going to be able to plug that gap. We were pleased to hear from Councillor Hercombe that following the work from the Greens, he's secured the 50,000 from the extended producer responsibility, and I would just like to say that again to address some of the sort of blight of roadside litter in our county. And I just wanted to take this opportunity, because I didn't do it last time, to thank all those volunteers of Hereford, Community Clean-up Group, Ross, and all those others that work independently and individually across our county to clear up the mess that others have left behind. I'd particularly like us to try and look a bit more at the commercial vehicles along Rotherhurst Link Road and the waste that is spilling from them. It is an absolute blight, and ask that National Highways are, communicated with more to address the sections of the strategic road network in our county. With regard to community wellbeing, Directorate, the stated intention is to deliver a service restructure to Talk Community. This is such a highly valued council interface with and to support our community voluntary sector. The EQIA in appendices indicates that it will impact the voluntary sector, children and young people. No detail is provided on these papers in what this reshape entails, but if it is to refocus on older people, then the community and the corporate, Children and Young Persons Directorate is going to need to pick this up in a way that's as effective as the relationships that have been built with Talk Community brokers. So that's a really big task to build those relationships on top of the statutory focus of what you're trying to deliver. And I'm just unclear how this is going to be achieved from the information we've got. And finally, whilst understanding the benefits to traders about the pop and shop and that it'll be extended, and I'm sure that'll be very much welcomed, what is the cost of the leader's announcement just now of this being extended to On Street in Hereford City, and where is that funding coming from to extend the free time, and has that been considered by the Section 151 officer? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments and questions. And Councillor Proctor.
I won't repeat some of the very important points that are made. I guess from Lib Dem's point of view, we worry that the Cabinet will beaver away in the dark in this difficult financial situation rather than working with partners across the council and the county. And for example, at the last Cabinet meeting, there was no mention in the papers of a 30-minute free parking scheme. It was mentioned briefly in debate, and then a press release went out announcing this bold initiative, but it's not clear to me who it's for or how it will work. And I challenge anyone, apart from possibly Councillor Hirkin, to park at Maylord, say, walk to the Hereford Post Office, queue for some considerable time, post parcel and walk back and be safely done in 30 minutes. And you didn't talk to councillors representing the city, and I guess not councillors representing the market towns. You say businesses are very positive, but that is not what I have heard in the city. You didn't talk to the BID, you didn't talk to the city council, and I guess, again, you didn't talk to town councils, you just pulled a rabbit out of a hat. And the council needs to be more imaginative, more open and more responsive and collaborative if it's going to navigate through these very difficult waters. I don't think this is the way that we should be doing business. And it will also leave members of the council wondering what other half-thought-through initiatives they will be voting through if they support this revenue budget when it comes to full council. And what's in the press release you're going to send out after this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor, for those observations. Okay, Councillor Davis is not online, so we can't have any comments from her. Right, okay. Some really interesting observations and questions. So, yes, okay, you're all queuing up. Councillor Stoddard, the responses to the consultation that Councillor Harvey has alluded to, you can do this two ways statistically, can't you? You can do it as a percentage of the population, or you can do it in real numbers as you did in your presentation, which was 359 respondents. That's a lot more than last year, isn't it not?
Yes, it is, literally. It's 50% more. It was 201 last year. It's 359 this year. The challenge we have is how can we get this engagement? There is apathy out there. We have tried numerous ways. We've conducted, myself and Rachel have stood on town squares in the middle of December. We've tried online presences, but we will learn from each one, and the increase may be small, but we will keep doing it, and we will carry on doing that sort of thing. So that's the first bit on how do we do it. We will also seek a particular challenge, which I'll be working with children and young people, and also with Councillor Biggs. We'll work to try and get into education, speak to the apprentices, and try and engage in them an understanding of what local politics is all about. It matters to them, because effectively they will be the ones paying the council tax within a number of years. So we've got to work with the younger people and try and encourage that. To come on to the second piece about...
Well, I was just going to say, taking up the point about the viability of raising council tax. I mean, it's a fascinating philosophical question, and given the fact that we're talking about the MTFS, the long-term financial picture of the council, it does, the finances of the council, the way we get the income, the demand and the expenditure, it does raise lots of questions about the long-term viability of the council tax base and council tax as it comes in. But I'm of the mind, when you're confronted with a question like that, you plan for what you know. and you plan for what you know in the foreseeable future, which is our medium-term financial plan. So although I think Councillor Harvey's asked an interesting question, I think it's best if we direct our energies towards what we do know and what we can forecast, rather than try to imagine in 10 years' time and whether council tax is a viable way of getting revenue.
If I can address that, Leader. So you're quite correct. That's what. But I'm looking to start to break that apathy at the earliest point. That's what I'm trying to say there. But to come back to the MTFS point that Councillor Harvey brought up, and she was addressing how can we assist the council tax burden on the population. I would like to draw our attention to last year's MTFS. Up until the 29th of November, we had set our council tax increase at 3.99%. We then, with the reduction of which was in our manifesto, and that's always been our intention. At that point, we had to therefore change it because the rural services grant was suddenly drawn away from us, and we ended up with about £9 million loss. This year, under fair funding review, part of the commitments has been that central government have made it very clear that council tax increases will be set as a minimum at 4.99%. We have no option. That's what it's set at. I would also draw everyone's attention to the fact that when we're looking at how we can work on our council tax base, even with our increase to just over £2,000 per house at D-band, central government are telling us that we should be raising council tax based on £2,200 per house. So it's actually we're less, and that is impacting on us, on the ability of how much we raise. So at all levels, to address Councillor Harvey's point, we would like to seek to address that, and then we will cover that in the last item today, which is the council tax reduction scheme.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stoddard. We have some concerns and queries about the dynamic between Talk Community and where the focus will be for Talk Community, and also the impact that will have on children's services. So, Councillor Gandhi, would you like to just comment on that?
Thank you. So I understand how passionately Councillor Simmons believes in Talk Community, as do I, and we all know that how important it is across the county and what it's able to deliver. I can assure her that the Children's Community Development roles, which were funded by Children's Directorate, are transferring into Children's Directorate. So they're not being removed, they're just transferring into Children's Directorate. And this follows a period of mapping and a review of children's and young people's community-based youth provision across the county. Locating the roles within children's services creates a stronger alignment with Families First, family hubs and wider children early help services, supporting clearer pathways for the families. Existing relationships and partnerships that have been built by officers will be retained and continuity of delivery maintained during the transition. This allows Talk Community to focus on reduced capacity on prevention, which is what Talk Community really was set up for. It's about prevention, whether it be adults, whether it be younger people. It is about prevention, and that's what's so important. But all of this, as I said at the last cabinet meeting, is subject to consultation. So we welcome any councillor, any member of the public, or anybody that uses Talk Community Service to contact us with their comments about what we're proposing.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Stoddard. Are you beavering away in the dark? Sorry,
Well,
or
that's
are
the other
you...
point I'd like to come back to is that I take umbrage with our beavering away in the dark. I think we're not beavering away in the dark, we're beavering away in the light. And we're very aware of the challenges ahead, and we welcome any contributions from all councillors of whatever colour to any ideas we come up with. We were looking at income. We asked Scrutiny Management back on the 23rd of January, and they had a task and finish group that looked at income, and they could come up with no definitive ideas. So it demonstrates that the cross-party approach, it is a challenging area. It's very difficult. But anybody, all 53 of us, if anyone has any ideas, we would be more than welcome. We're humble enough to accept that 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 will be of use to us. But and my final point, Leader would be that to give Councillor Harvey the reassurance that next Friday I will have 10 minutes for revenue, and I'll be held to that. So I will keep it short as I can.
Okay, thank you. And we did have a, well, look, you've put in a lot of hard work into this, and it is absolutely right that you categorically set out all of the components to this extremely complex picture. And it's a matter of public record as to how we've set out all of the facets of a budget. And I'm proud of the fact that we have categorically, openly, and comprehensively set out all of the issues that a budget has to incorporate when balancing what is absolutely essential for the residents of Herefordshire. So you're not time limited in my meetings, but at full council, you're time limited to 10 minutes. But if you want to take that 10 minutes, I'll be seconding that proposal. And lastly, we've talked about Pop and Shop. It was mentioned at the Cabinet on the 20th, and it was mentioned again in passing in scrutiny. The cost of the initiative will be met through increased activity and the charging, because we're proposing a 10% increase, so that will be absorbed by that. But I have to say, when you announce something that's extremely positive, and it is something that will really boost trade, given that, it's not announcing parking that's going to be free forever, it is a opportunity to recognise that people, if they want to pop to Maylord Orchards and they're parking at Maylords, they can have that half an hour free. It doesn't mean to say that they're going to make it all the way across town, but it's a gesture. And if you do want to pop and you do want to shop to that local shop, and that walk-in trade for half an hour, I think that is a real boon. I think it's a right thing to do, and I think it's a stimulus to and a really important message that we want to support trade and our economy wherever we can possible. We already operate a scheme where we have free parking at Christmas time, and that is to support traders. And this is an extenuation of that as and when we can, within the means that we've got and the challenges that we have. But, I note an article in the Hereford Times, criticism of increasing parking charges. We are having to find £20 million worth of savings, and we're not getting the sufficient help we need from national government. We've set that out. And so in the round, when you see that, and you see us wanting to provide some important gesture to traders and to shoppers, I think this is the right thing to do. I think it's a really positive thing to do. And in the interest of fairness, it should be for the benefit of Hereford citizens as well as all the other people who live in the market towns. So we've had a great debate. We've got a proposal. How many recommendations? 8 recommendations, right? One proposal. And so there's a proposal on the table that you're proposing, Councillor Stoddart. I will second that. And all councillors, cabinet members in favour, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. And I'm now going to propose a 10-minute break. So if we can come back at we'll come back at 5:22. Thank you. If I can ask for to be started, please.
We're live, Leader.
Thank you very much. And just to recommence the Cabinet meeting for the 5th of February, we had a 10-minute recess, and so we're starting again, starting with agenda item 8, which is the capital investment budget and capital strategy update. And this agenda item starts on page 123. Councillor Harvey has another appointment that she needs to get back to, and rather than rush to that meeting, she's leaving in good time, which I think is a good idea. And because she's leaving the meeting, Councillor Hitchener will take her place as the representative of the group leader for when we talk to group leaders on any item. So again, as I say, the capital programme is itemised as agenda item 8, and I will ask Councillor Stoddart to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. This report seeks to recommend to Cabinet the final version of the 2026-27 capital investment budget, together with the capital strategy for 26-27 onwards. I would like to take this opportunity to remind all Cabinet members that the capital programme reflects capital investments which generate benefits to the county for a period in excess of 1 year. There have been no changes to the report since I presented the draft to you all on the 20th of January 2026. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind you that inclusion in the capital programme is not an approval to proceed, and that each project will be subject to its own governance, and a full business case will be presented for approval where required and in full compliance with the Council's contract procedure and rules as applicable. The proposed capital programme for 2026-27 presents an ambitious programme of capital investment which is aligned to the priorities of the Council plan across people, place, growth and transformation. The public consultation from November to December last year shows strong support from residents across a number of key areas of the proposed additions to the capital programme, namely that respondents are not comfortable with reductions in highways maintenance and street lighting, and that this support was reflected in respondents' views on which service they would prioritise if they only had £1 left to spend, with highways maintenance and street lighting as the most common choice. I would also like to highlight to you all that SMB at their meeting on the 23rd of January 26 had a thorough and detailed look at the proposed capital programme, and the recommendations from the meeting of 23rd January 26 did not include any comments on this capital programme. The public consultation therefore supports the proposed additions for the 2026-27 capital programme, which will deliver increased temporary and emergency accommodation to respond to homelessness and housing demand across the county. This is the largest addition to the programme at £10 million and demonstrates this administration's commitment to this significant issue. Mitigate key revenue budget pressures through alternate school provision and pupil referral units. Improve the use of technology to deliver efficiencies and innovation in services to residents. Deliver new infrastructure to support growth opportunities for housing. Strengthen resilience of our school and property assets, improve public rights of way access, and continue to provide investment in the county's road network. All proposals are included in Appendix A, along with outlined strategic business cases at Appendix E. Appendix A provides details of the proposed additions to the existing capital programme that have been identified and the impact of approving these additions. 14 capital investment project proposals totalling £44 million have been identified, and these will be funded by prudential borrowing, capital receipts reserve and revenue reserves. And I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone of the difference in capital funding, where on completion of the project, Herefordshire Council own an asset that has value as against revenue, where there is no asset, only a service being delivered. Responding to housing needs across the county remains a high priority for this council. A further provision of £10 million has been added to the capital programme to bring forward schemes to deliver housing to meet the county's urgent need for provision and provide better homes for those in need and reduce the high cost dependence on temporary accommodation. The funding is based on borrowing, which is repaid through the income from housing benefit and the reduced cost of temporary accommodation, along with the applications for Homes England grants and some provision of corporate funding borrowing where required. And this will have a very positive impact by reducing our future revenue costs by £1.7 million per annum. From April 2020 to March 2025, this council's strategic housing team has supported the delivery of 1,298 homes, with a further 193 homes delivered so far in financial year 25-26. We're also fully committed to identifying solutions to develop affordable housing, and work is underway to review best practice options through engagement with developers and registered providers. An historic building fund of £5 million has been added to fund future works to preserve and restore historic buildings in Hereford, including the Museum and Art Gallery, the Shire Hall and the Town Hall. The approved capital programme includes an existing allocation of £75.75 million to fund Town Hall improvements, and this historic building fund will be held centrally, and it is delegated to the S151 officer to allocate funds to specific project budgets once final contract prices have been received to carry out the work required. An informal review of all prospective capital funding requests has been completed to ensure that the financial impact of the funding requests has been taken account of in the medium-term financial strategy. And concurrently, a review of the current capital programme has taken place, and it was agreed to remove a number of projects that were no longer needed or where alternate funding has been identified to release borrowing and capital receipts for utilisation with new bids. The projects that have been removed are identified at paragraph 13 of this report. The capital strategy, which forms Appendix D of this report, has been developed in accordance with SIPFA guidelines. The purpose of the capital strategy is to give a clear and concise view of how Herefordshire Council determines its priorities for capital investment, decides how much it can afford to borrow, and sets out its risk appetite. In conclusion then, I fully endorse this report. I fully endorse this report and strongly believe that this ambitious capital programme will deliver on this Conservative-led administration's commitment to the people of Herefordshire, whilst being clearly aligned with the council plan and its vision of delivering the best for Herefordshire in everything we do. I have no hesitation in commending its 3 recommendations to Cabinet for their approval today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoddart. And Cabinet colleagues, do you have any queries or questions or observations for Councillor Stoddart? If not, I will go straight to group leaders. Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. The Liberal Democrats would like to see a greater use of capital in partnership with the city and market towns to help deliver projects that will have a real impact on people young and old. We, of course, support starting work on phase 1 of the bypass, which should have been completed years ago, and if it had been, wouldn't have the revenue impact incurred by prudential borrowing now. It's not a magic solution to anything, but it is a vital piece of infrastructure the city and the county desperately need. Other infrastructure we need is housing, especially social and affordable housing. And so we welcome the £10 million allocation for affordable housing. As described by Councillor Stoddart, this is mostly bringing forward safe and secure temporary accommodation, which should reduce costs and improve the experience of homeless people and families, which is absolutely fantastic. We completely support that. But we also need investment in significantly expanding the supply of social and affordable housing. Councillor Stoddart said work was underway in this area, but it's been underway since December 23. The Housing Development Working Group has seen a business plan that shows a housing development company could be viable over the medium to long term, but there's no investment in the capital programme. There are financing issues to be worked through, but they are not the fundamental barriers. The fundamental barrier is the lack of political will. The Liberal Democrats are bitterly disappointed that significant investment in the delivery of social and affordable homes is absent from this capital programme. Will the Cabinet think again?
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Proctor, I look to other group leaders for their contributions. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Leader. We recognise, as a Green Group, the very many positive elements of the capital budget, including the potential borrowing For strategic housing accommodation, as referenced to Councillor Proctor, the alternative education provision and SEND that will help to reduce escalating revenue costs in this area. That is what we should be doing prudential borrowing for. However, decisions on where cuts have to be made in the revenue budget for the next financial year and beyond have been made all the harder by the Conservative administration's folly on capital projects. Councillors are being asked today to approve a capital budget that includes a further £5 million loan for the Southern Link Road. This 2-mile stretch of road from the A49 at Grafton to the A465 at Belmont is now estimated to cost £45.3 million, landing entirely on Herefordshire taxpayers' shoulders. And we still don't have a full business case or transport modelling data to demonstrate whether this is value for money or will achieve the benefits being claimed of it. And before you join Councillor Proctor and the Lib Dems in blaming the previous coalition, whose terms span the COVID years, I might add, for cancelling the original scheme in favour of a cheaper Eastern Bridge crossing that would have been delivered, there has never been funding for the full bypass, and no monies have ever been received by the council from the LEP or DFT for the Southern Link Road. We have never had to hand money back that we have had in our pockets. You should be honest with the residents that this road and spend will not deliver them a river crossing or noticeable improvements in congestion in the centre of Hereford. No government will fund the bypass in the current financial climate, not least because we haven't done the lower cost basic interventions first, including the Park and Choose site languishing unfinished at Homer. Instead, the need to repay the loan for the SLR from council tax revenue means that further cuts are having to be made, or there's less ability to fund things that will actually make a difference to people everywhere in Herefordshire, but particularly our young people. One of the public questions today was spot on when it asked, where are the impacts of the 26-27 budget changes on enabling the young people of Herefordshire to safely access education, training and jobs by means other than a private car? The answer from the Cabinet member, Councillor Price, was incorrect. Full council committed only in October to including within this budget a pilot scheme to look at extending college bus passes for 16 to 19-year-olds, for which they already pay, may I add, £1,000 a year, to extend it to cover evenings, weekends and school holidays, despite assurances in the December council papers that these proposals were being prepared for budget within the timeline. We were told 2 days ago that this had been pulled and would not be proceeding. This is indefensible. Supporting young people to access employment, training or leisure activities is vital if we're not to worsen the rural inequalities and to encourage economic growth. The costs involved are a fraction of the spend on the road and would have had an immediate impact. There is clearly no political will or leadership from the Cabinet member in prioritising this in line with full council's stated wishes. There also appears, from what I can see, to be a further hit to areas outside of Hereford, where we see a reduction in spend of 1.2 million across our market towns, with the removal of the city and market town public realm investment, and instead this being funded for those schemes to be replaced by the LTB grant rather than in addition to. I've asked for extra information on this and I'm awaiting a response. So, in summary, the Green Group feel the capital budget is a bit like a curate's egg. It is good in parts, said while being forced to swallow the truly unpalatable.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. And finally, Councillor Hitchener.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm doing this a little bit on the fly. I hope you'll appreciate that.
Take your time.
Perhaps I should first of all mention that I potentially have a conflict of interest due to the property that I own, which is close to the Southern Relief Road route. So I have a dispensation to speak on this. I notice the highway maintenance is a high priority for residents. I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I don't know about you all, but the last week or so I've been driving around Herefordshire and there are massive loads of potholes. It seems to me the holes are appearing where potholes used to be. They've been filled in and it's all coming up again. And I really do think this needs to be looked at again. It's all very well building new roads and spending millions and borrowing money to do that. But the state of the roads is absolutely appalling. I think I'm driving much more slowly as a result, which might be of some benefit. I think committing to such a high level of expenditure over the next year is well, I'm not quite sure is really appropriate. I think a careful look needs to be made at all the expenditure. If it was your own home and property and you're looking forward to a reduced income going forward, you'd be ever so cautious about spending too much money. Reserves, I see are going down from projected 90.8 to 51.7 million. I know that when we were in the administration, we looked very carefully at those reserves, and we were assured by the Section 151 officer at the time that a lot of them could not be touched. Taking 40 million out of them, I'm sure the current Section 151 officer has reassured you that a reduction is appropriate and permitted, but it strikes me that another year of cuts, another 20 or 30 million, we really will have very little left in the coffers at the time of the next election. I was pleased to see the continuation of spending on school projects on Ayleston Hill and in Peterchurch. I think that's excellent news that we can carry on doing that, and you wouldn't be surprised to hear me say that I'd rather we spend money on schools than on a bypass. I think that we should be spending to save. I mentioned in my question to Cabinet about Hoople. I think there might be opportunities to spend more money in capital with them in order to reduce the cost of things going forward. There is no proposal at the moment, I don't think, to invest with them, but I do accept the point, not made yet, but I'm making in my own mind that it's up to Hoople to decide how it spends its capital money, and we shouldn't be drawing probably on council resources. So I just made that point. And I think that is it. Thank you, Leader, for the opportunity.
Thank you for those contributions, and for all group leaders, their points, taking them in turn. Thank you, Councillor Proctor, for the Lib Dems' continued support for the bypass, and in particular the first phase of the bypass. It's absolutely essential to provide the infrastructure we need to grow our county in the right way, both economically, and to provide those houses that you absolutely are right to say that we need. I think it's really important to note that we have to, with regard to the capital programme, address the temporary accommodation issues, the statutory obligations that we have. So Councillor Stollard's absolutely right to focus some of our resource with the capital programme to make sure there's allocation of those funds, absolutely. And it is also imperative that we work with housing providers to ensure that there is coming online more social and affordable housing provision. It may interest members to note that since 2020 to March 2025, the Strategic Housing Team has supported the delivery of 1,298 homes, and with a further 193 homes delivered so far this year, 2025 to 2026. That includes social rent, affordable rent, right to buy, shared ownership, and low-cost market housing and first-time homes. So I think that when you consider all of the activity that the housing team, Strategic Housing Team, has been undertaking over a period of time, the council has been working very hard to provide housing. There is much more to do, and there has to be a real strategic approach in making sure that we use best use of our assets to bring about an incentive, more affordable housing and social housing rent. We have to incentivise our partners and work with them, and also explore every option, and we will continue to do that. But to insinuate that it's not a priority for my administration, I don't think is fair and correct. And there's been a lot of activity from the strategic housing team to make sure that we do exactly what we can to bring back all of these properties. It's interesting to note that this in this amount of housing that's been brought back in line, a considerable amount of that has been empty properties. Anyway, as part of my brief for the next cabinet meeting where I give a report, I will be clarifying all of the development that all of the housing gains that we've had from the strategic housing team and working in partnership with the sector as a report. And I think that would be really illuminating for council. But of course, there won't be a leaders' report next council meeting because we'll be just solely focusing on the budget. With regard to the LEP funding, due to a freedom of information request, we ascertained in opposition that there was £2.3 million paid back to the LEP. So LEP money was spent and the LEP wanted some money back. There was an agreement in the end to pay some of that money back, and the sum agreed was 2.3 million. I remember that because I was there when all of this was happening. It was LEP money that LEP wanted back. So, but Councillor Stoddart, did you want to comment? I just encapsulate the comments. The state of our roads, Councillor Hitchener is right to point out that, potholes are a feature. If you're going to see a pothole, it's this time of year. This is the worst time of year for potholes. It's always when the weather's wettest and coldest that you will have potholes. But you have to see this in the context of the record levels of investment we have made in road improvements. The road on my way home tonight will be closed because of road resurfacing works that are happening. That's not happening just because it's the way I go home. That's because that part of that road has been identified through the intelligence of the conditions of all the roads, and works will continue there. But I think one of the best strategic things we've done also, apart from road resurfacing, we've been doing patching and surface dressing and doing it in a much more strategic way, which is really improving and addressing those perennial problems where you have a pothole that gets repaired and then it pops out again. So our whole strategic approach has been an improvement, and it was, it's an ongoing mission that we will continue to have. So, and also finally, I welcome your comments, Councillor Hitchener, about investment in our schools. That has been a really successful way to invest in education, because education is a real priority for us and young people. And so we welcome those comments, and we will continue to invest in our skills as and when. But I can see I've got two cabinet members who wish to comment. I think Councillor Durkin first, and then Councillor Hercombe if he wants to.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you for endorsing the money that we are spending on road improvements, the road resurfacing and surface dressing and strengthening. Just to put a bit of context to this, you are correct, obviously, that cold weather and water does not make good bedfellows with potholes. But with our investment in the highways that we've produced so far, we are 118 miles of improved road, and to put it into further context, it's between here and Manchester.
Okay, that's considerable. Councillor Hercombe?
Yeah, I came across some interesting figures the other day. Usually we get about 4,000 potholes a month, but in January that has spiked to 9,000. So there are a lot of potholes out there. We fixed 3,000 of them. There's still a lot more to go. What I would say is what we're actually seeing is the results of underinvestment in the network over the previous 5-6 years. Unfortunately, if you surface dress, it's a stitch in time, and you can extend the life of a road for a fraction of the cost by 10 to 12 years. That hasn't happened. If you put it into context, we invested 47 million to be fair, in 25-26. In the last year of the previous administration, they invested 27. So there has been a sea change and a step change in terms of investment, but we are still catching up with a backlog from underinvestment in previous years.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Stoddart, you.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to address Councillor Hatcher's point about spend to save and draws attention to at least three of the items. The first £10 million, I think I did mention that will actually have an immediate impact. We currently spend about £7 million a year on emergency housing. So within the first year, we're expecting that to be reduced by £1.7 million. So that's a definite impact. And I think you may recall that last year I said we looked at all of our capital projects from the prism of how can it reduce our revenue output. Similarly, there are two items under children and young people. One is alternate provision and the other one is a PRU. That will have, at the minute, a cost of educating a young child in Herefordshire is approximately £17,000. If we have to go outside of Herefordshire, it's about £75,000. There is, off the top of my head, 75 children that we currently transport outside of the county at that cost of approximately 60k per child, and that doesn't include the additional costs. So those three projects straight away are definitely called spend to save. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Okay. Councillor Price.
Not going to make a big meal out of it because there is a lot of things in there that need to be just corrected. We've had, if we go back, the folly of the bypass, as we say, well, clearly we're on a different sheet and we always have been on that. And I mentioned it at the last Cabinet meeting, in 2014, £27 million was on the cards for building the SLR as it was in those days, and on the cancellation of it, that was lost. And the figure that the leader mentioned was the figure that we had to pay back, but we didn't have the grant. And I have to recall, when I was working on this project at the end of the previous but one administration, we were lining up funding from the Treasury for £180 million, which was supported by our MP. That hadn't come through because of the change of the authority at the end of 2019. So the funding has been lined up over the years. It's been lost because of, you know, if you're not in your queue in a capital project, you just go to the back of the scheme. I'm often said about, it was mentioned about this cheaper bridge to the east. Never was cheaper. The first thing that happened when we came in, we just saw how much it was going to cost. It was a colossal cost because of where it was and the length of it and the difference in levels of it. So let's get, if we're going to start quoting facts, let's at least quote the accurate facts. The issue over the children free bus pass has caused perplexity within our bus service team. They've been looking at all sorts of things, and they came up with figures for what it would cost to give this facility to all children. That was not a pilot, it was looked at what it would cost. In amongst looking at things, when you start to look at things, you look at in the round, because what you asked for was a letter to be sent to enhance the potential of a national scheme. The national scheme, why should we run pilots for evidence for a national scheme? That bus team have looked at it, they've come up with figures, and it was unaffordable in this budget to be able to do what they came up with. So we may be in a different place on it, but it has been looked at, and we are trying to get to a point where we can fund a pilot scheme to be able to come up with it. And you and I, Councillor Simmons, we had a conversation yesterday. That pilot scheme has not been identified. It had been looked at whether or not our children in care going forward might be a sensible non-lottery type allotment of how this might work. There is a lot to happen. We've got 9 bus operators in this county. Not all of them want to be engaged in it. Those that do have got a lot to do about data collection and how we implement these tickets. This isn't just something because you had a motion 3 months ago that you're going to actually get a solution immediately. And you did say yesterday that as long as we were doing something within the next 12 months, that you would accept it, and we will get something going forward in that period of time. Just a mention really of, it's not in my portfolio as such, but I've been working on a project for a road that's in that is used by my residents on a regular basis. It's in Mr. Hitchener's, Councillor Hitchener's ward. I don't know whether he knows about it or not, but the road's going to be closed for 3 weeks. It's regularly known in our part of the world as the Western Bypass. It's going to be closed for 3 weeks, and it's having all sorts of concrete haunching done on it. The road is in a dire state. It's been diabolical for a number of years, and it is now completely fallen apart. And it is only going to be drained and patched so that it can be surface dressed next year. So, and on the basis of that, I actually said at the parish meeting last night, there's 6 gangs out about mending 150 potholes a day at the present moment. You know, you can only do what you can do. And this time of year is always bad. Every year that I've been a councillor, potholes have been a problem. At this time of year, we get better and we get worse. So in that point, I'm still quite happy with our strategy, and I've addressed the points that have been made. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with regard to the budgetary implications of trying to honour the spirit of the motion that was at full council and the options that you're looking at to try and assist with providing greater transport provision for young people, can I have your assurance that you will continue to look into this matter further, and you will keep all councillors, I mean, it was a motion put forward by the Green Group, I accept, but if you could keep all councillors appraised of the work that the department is doing on that matter, I would really appreciate it. Okay then, right. So if there's no other comments from Councillor Biggs.
Leader, I will if it's okay. Just we talk about this investment in emergency housing, and we always dwell on money in the room, and it's appropriate we do because it's budget, so it's got to be about the cash first. But it's also about the lived experience, and investing that 10 million in emergency housing. Dealing with some, we know that while we provide housing, we support people in a way that is better than the alternative, but it's not as good as it could be, and that's the point of investing in that money, to make the lived experience of those both families and individuals a better lived experience. That's doing the best for people of Herefordshire. The end result of that investment as well just may mean that some of those people have the lift they need to make their lives on track in a way that we don't see them back into adult social care environments later down the road. So that money is so important, it's so vital. I'm really pleased that Cabinet colleagues and Council hopefully will support on that, because it's hitting where people need it most. In terms of affordable housing, everyone will be very clear that I'm all over affordable housing. I've tried really hard to push this through, and the business case coming together on that, we worked really hard to make it all it could be. The simple fact is the budget pressures we have don't allow us to do what we would all like to do. But that doesn't mean we're doing nothing. We're doing an awful lot to make sure we do leverage with partners and use what resources we have to move forward, and that'll become much more obvious to all councillors and Herefordians as we go forward.
Thank you, Councillor Biggs. Okay, if there's no further comments, we have the recommendation before us proposed by Councillor Stoddard, and I will second that. All in favour? Thank you. Excellent. Right, okay, moving swiftly on to agenda item 9. So to note and review the earmark reserves held by the council, the item begins on page 139 of the first supplement agenda pack. First supplement agenda pack. Councillor Stoddart, I believe this is your item, so if you'd like to take us through.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very pleased to bring this report to Cabinet today. It is once again clear demonstration of this administration's commitment to openness and transparency. And building on our work of last year, we have in the earmarked reserves and general policy statement of 2026-27, which is attached Appendix 1 to this report, detailed the rationale for each of the earmarked reserves. This, together with the context of why the level is maintained at a particular level to meet known future commitments and then to mitigate against unforeseen future events. Earmarked reserves represent amounts set aside for future expenditure to support specific corporate priorities or for general contingencies and cash flow management. The general fund balance is not allocated or earmarked for a specific purpose, but represents a strategic reserve to be used in the event of a major incident or emergency. It is considered prudent to maintain a level of reserve balances commensurate with the risk, and an assessment to confirm the adequacy and robustness of balances is undertaken annually by the Section 151 officer as part of this budget setting process. The earmarked reserves and general policy statement of 2026-27, as I say, attached to Appendix 1, sets out the Council's approach to maintaining appropriate levels of reserves and general balances to meet known future commitments and to mitigate against unforeseen future events. The Council's usable the Council's usable revenue reserves are split between a general reserve, the general fund, and earmarked reserves that are held for certain purposes. Part of the Council's general fund is held as a strategic reserve to cover emergency events such as unforeseen financial liabilities or natural disasters. The general reserve fund is maintained at a minimum level of between 3 and 5% of the net revenue budget. As at 31 March 2025, the general reserve balance totalled £10.1 million, which is 4.3% of the Council's 2025-26 approved net revenue budget. The Council's earmarked reserve balances as at 31 March 2025 totalled £80.7 million, and they comprised of £16.8 million of reserves held for liability and risk, £14.1 million for budget resilience, £9.3 million which represents funds to support strategic priorities, £1.8 million of accounting reserves, £27 million of grants and contributions, and £11.7 million of balances held on behalf of schools. The earmarked reserve balances as at 31 March 25, detailed at Annex A of Appendix 1, include £18 million of grant funding carried forward to 25-26. And this represents amounts of grant funding received with no outstanding grant conditions attached and which have not yet been applied to relevant expenditure. And in accordance with the principles of SIPFA Code of Practice on Local Accounting and relevant accounting standards, these amounts are treated as earmarked reserves to be carried forward for application in future accounting periods. The forecast earmarked reserve balances for 25-26 and 26-27 financial years are noted at Annex A, Appendix 1. At 31 March 26, the forecast balance of earmarked reserves is £65.2 million and £41.6 million at 31 March 27. And these balances will increase as new grants are received in future accounting periods. The Quarter 2 25-26 budget report presented to Cabinet in November 25 reports a forecast overspend of £7 million at Quarter 2 prior to management action, which is estimated at £3.3 million to reduce the forecast overspend to £3.7 million. Any overspend in 25-26 must be funded using the Council's available reserves, and a review of reserve balances will be undertaken as part of the process to finalise the outturn position for the year. The medium-term financial strategy identifies the key financial risks that could affect the Council's financial position and resilience over the medium-term period. The Council's financial strategy aims to minimise the use of reserves in the medium term and to replenish them to support future sustainability, enable the Council to respond to unexpected changes, and to invest in the continued transformation and improvement of its services. As funding pressures continue, the Council will need to continue opportunities to replenish reserve balances as part of the future financial strategy to build and protect financial resilience to mitigate against future financial risks. Maintaining reserves for risk mitigation and an annual review of reserve balances is recommended by SIPFA as best practice. The risks mitigated by funds held in earmarked reserves and the General Fund are highlighted in Appendix 1. Under Section 25 of the Local Government Act 2003, the Section 151 officer has a duty to report on the robustness of estimates and adequacy of reserves when the authority is setting its annual budget and council tax requirement. The review of earmarked reserves does not have in itself any legal implications. Using the reserves to manage risks is therefore a prudent approach. I'm therefore very pleased to endorse this report and propose that its two recommendations are approved by Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoddart. Does any Cabinet member have any observations, thoughts or queries or questions? No, the reserves are what they are. Okay. If not, I'll go to group leaders for any comments that they may have. Councillor Hitchin is first off the blocks.
Yes, I think probably I preempted myself with the previous comments about the reserves. I mean, if one looks at one of the tables, the reserves were 80.7 million 2 years ago. They're now projected to be 41.6, so a 40 million reduction. That's about 50%. That is a huge reduction. I was quite interested to hear Councillor Stoddart referring to rebuilding new reserves from grants. I'd appreciate it if you could give us a bit more detailed information about that, because it just staggers me that he thinks that there's going to be a load of money coming from central government to rebuild those reserves. I think the situation is just going to be, it's going to look awful in a year's time. It's going totally in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hitchener. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Leader. Just to reiterate what I have stated, our reserves are there as, a cushion and for unforeseen expenditure or risk. And as stated by Councillor Herken, we are seeing the impacts of climate change now. We are seeing increased amounts of water and flooding on our assets, which are damaging them and are not sustainable to repair them in the normal road maintenance budgets. We are going to see additional impacts on our assets, on our residents, that will require potentially calling on those reserves, and I am deeply worried that we are getting into a worse position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Proctor, no comments. Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Leader. To respond to Councillor Hitchener's comments, I'm not expecting central government to suddenly open purses and give us additional funding. But what I was explaining there is that as part of our future financial strategy, any excess we find will be going into reserves. That's the point we're making there. Thank you.
Councillor Stoddart, can you just confirm the costs of cancelling the bypass, decapitalisation costs, the cost of paying back the LEP money, all of these costs incurred by cancelling the bypass? How did we fit the bill for that?
Well, we didn't. It was the people of Herefordshire that paid for it, because effectively, as we explained back in May 2023, I think it was about £280 per household in Hereford paid that money. In addition to that, £27 million that the LEP and Shropshire came back against for us. So much as Councillor Simmons says, that we need to be open, we need to be fully open, that the people of Herefordshire paid for the cancellation of that bypass that was there, as my colleague Councillor Price explained. It was fully funded and it was there to be done. And you chose to cancel it. And without that, if that had been done, we would not be there for having these elements in the budget that we're the capital programme we're looking to pay for now.
But the point being, the decapitalisation costs were met from reserves. Is that correct?
I'm afraid I can't answer that directly, but my recommend.
But
the
yes, I think
one says yes, it would have
yeah,
been. Yes.
Yeah, so it would have been. So our reserves would have been a lot healthier had we have not cancelled the bypass. Yeah. Okay. Well, the decapitalisation costs are a matter of public record, which is in the cabinet the full council meeting of the February 2021. So if anybody's interested in the full decapitalisation costs, they can look there. Okay, right. I shall move on.
Am I allowed to make any comment?
No, Councillor Hitchener, no. So, yep, you've proposed.
The annual review of the earmarked reserves.
Excellent. I'll second that. All cabinet members. Okay, thank you very much. Moving swiftly on. Right. Okay, so another really important facet of the council budgeting process is the proposal of the council tax reduction scheme. So this item, agenda item 10, is to recommend to council the 2026-27 local council tax reduction scheme. The item begins on page 207 of the agenda pack. And once again, Councillor Stoddart, can you take us through this item? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I can also say to all my colleagues that this will be the last time you'll hear my dulcet tones this afternoon. So finally, this report before you recommends that the council tax reduction scheme is maintained at the maximum level in financial year 2026-27. This means that all eligible households will continue to receive the maximum level of discount for a further year. Council tax charges can be reduced if the bill payer meets certain set criteria contained in the council tax reduction scheme, which is available to working age and pensioner claimants. The pensioner CTR scheme is set nationally. However, the working age CTR is set locally by ourselves. Within Herefordshire, there are more than 11,000 bill payers who are currently in receipt of CTR, with over 6,000 claims coming from working age applicants. The existing local working age CTR scheme was approved by full council in February 2025 and is included in the document at Appendix 1, with the maximum discount maintained in 26-27 to mirror those available to pensioner cases. This means that a 100% discount is awarded under CTR unless their income breaches the threshold, irrespective of the council tax band that the property falls into. This Conservative-led administration listens to members of the public, and during the public budget consultation, which took place between November and December 2025, the results report clear support for continuing discount for council tax for those most in need, with support from the majority of residents. Whilst no changes are proposed for financial year 26-27, the responses of the survey will support improvements and inform plans to increase participation in future rounds of consultation. Subsequently, we have brought forward this report to continue to provide this support to those individuals who require it. I would also like to take this opportunity to highlight, however, that in addition to the CTR scheme, the Council also provides other discounts, and these are listed on our website. Maintaining the maximum discount in 26-27 will have a positive impact on the community by minimising the debt burden on residents who struggle to pay their council tax charge. I'm therefore very proud and pleased to endorse this report and propose that its recommendation is approved by Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoddart. A much needed facility, really, when dealing with the pressures that the council tax bills will put on some households. Any comments from Cabinet members? If not, I will go to group leaders for any comments. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Leader. The Greens fully support the CTR scheme to ensure that those most in need in our communities continue to receive this support. It's absolutely vital given the maximum increase in council tax being proposed, and we are really pleased to see that you've done this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your support on that one.
Yeah.
Councillor Hitchener.
Yeah, I seem to recall that the previous Conservative administration only had an 80% allowance for this, and it was the independent Green Alliance that moved the discount up to 100%, and I'm very pleased to see that's being continued. The other action which we took was that the interest which was received on money that the council had on deposit and if it was not allocated elsewhere in the budget, we decided to allocate it towards this particular project. It doesn't seem to be that is being applied in this case. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Proctor? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any other comments? If not, I mean, the point has already been made that it's absolutely imperative that we have this facility and this option to address hardship, and so fully endorse that. And we will check as to when the 100% was introduced. Right, okay then. So all in agreement there. Thank you for those comments. And Councillor Stoddart is proposing. I will second. All in favour? Absolutely. Right. And then finally, the moment you've all been waiting for. The next item on the agenda is agenda item 11. This is Children's Services, Ofsted Inspection Outcome and the Improvement Plan Phase 3. So the purpose of this report is to present Cabinet with the outcome of the inspection of the local authority and which took place from the 10th to the 21st of November and was published on the 12th of January 2026. The item begins on page 353 of the agenda pack, and I will say no further comments so that I don't steal any thunder from Councillor Powell. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. So the leaders introduced the purpose of the report. I know you will all have read the report in detail, but I am very pleased to be able to report Herefordshire Council's Children's Services has been rated good overall by Ofsted, with each specific service area receiving a good judgment, and the impact of leaders on social work practice with the children and families judged as outstanding. This marks a significant achievement for Herefordshire, reflecting the hard work and dedication of practitioners, managers, elected members and partners who committed to deliver on the improvements detailed in the Herefordshire Children's Services and Partnership Improvement Plan. I do not intend to read the report, of course, but would wish to highlight some extracts. As an overarching introduction, Ofsted found that children's services are rightly considered as a high priority for the Council, and said a visible and effective leadership team, supported by corporate and political leaders, has enabled vast improvements in the services delivered to children and their families, with particular pace and vision led by the Corporate Director of Children's Services, who is aspirational for children and committed to enhancing their lives. I would bring to Cabinet's attention this achievement is all the more remarkable given the timescales involved. In July 2024, we were pleased to welcome our Director of Children's Services, Tina Russell, as our interim director, an appointment that was made permanent later in the year. At that time, we'd been the subject of a number of monitoring visits by Ofsted, each of which expressed concern about the lack of pace of improvements, and our permanence in social workers was still stubbornly low at 29%. It is therefore pleasing to see recognition of Tina's leadership in the report. We moved quickly on a number of fronts, most notably the Director developing and introducing our revised improvement plan, focused on our quality assurance approach to understanding ourselves well and to understand the difference we were making to children's lives. This meant doing 4 interrelated things: developing our key performance indicators, developing our audit activity, developing methods of asking for feedback. And I just wanted to pause there and reflect. We needed the current voice and experience of children and families to understand the impact of our current practice, to build on what we had learned from our more historical interventions, and develop simple and meaningful outcome measures of success using that quality assurance framework. The combination of those activities told us where we were making a difference and achieving our vision to make children feel happy, healthier and safer. It also told us where we were not making improvements so we could focus learning activity. So to some headlines from the report. Ofsted leaders have firmly established a culture within the organisation to ensure that children are at the centre of service delivery and that the views of children and their families inform the development of services. Leaders have worked diligently using effective and mature partnerships to influence and improve the quality and consistency of practice. Recruitment and retention initiatives have successfully stabilised the workforce, and leaders have nurtured and coached their teams to deliver improvements and good practice, leading by example. A comprehensive quality assurance framework has enabled leaders to have an accurate understanding of the quality and impact of services delivered to children and families. As corporate parents, leaders were described as effective and who understand what children in care and care leavers need, and that their ambitious and child-focused approach has ensured that children's voices are sought and heard. Leaders had a clear plan in place to manage the changes needed as a result of the social care reforms. Key strengths identified by Ofsted include families benefiting from effective early help and family support, delivered by a multi-agency network of professionals. Well-considered, comprehensive assessments by social workers that are informed by the views of children, families and other professionals, and that demonstrate an understanding of the strengths in families, balancing this against presenting risks and needs. Appropriate thresholds for care and protection were recognised as being applied effectively, with strong management oversight at all tiers. A workforce of staff who are committed to building relationships with children and young people through creative and individualised direct work. Effective support being delivered by skilled practitioners to keep children living with their families or to return to their care where it is in their best interest to do so. An established and impactful multi-agency service that reduces risk to children experiencing exploitation. Thorough assessments and tailored support for foster carers, including kinship carers, who are well supported and have improved training opportunities. A strong service to care leavers with a clear and comprehensive local offer, delivered by persistent and creative personal advisors who are committed to understanding the young people's lives and helping them achieve their aspirations. The report did note 2 areas where development was needed: management oversight of the local authority designated officer function, and identification and assessment of children living in private fostering arrangements. Both of those we were already aware of, and Ofsted noted we already had plans in place to address those. The Ofsted rating reflects the hard work that has taken place through our improvement journey, and I would like to thank the Director, Tina Russell, and her leadership team, and the children's workforce, and the contribution of other council staff. I would also like to recognise the leadership of the Chief Executive, the Leader of the Council, and my Cabinet colleagues, and to thank you for your trust in appointing me to the lead member role. Also to thank elected members, in particular members of the Scrutiny Committee, and our partners, including police, health and education, but also those from the voluntary and community sector for their support and challenge throughout. I would like to take this opportunity to pause and take time to pay tribute to those families who have taken their time to give us feedback and who have worked closely with us to help improve our services. We have actively listened to what you have said to us, and your input has been fundamental in ensuring that we offer children, young people and their families the best possible support when they need it the most. Children's and families' voices are the best way for me to thank our hard-working and committed workforce. To date, 85% of our families said that they felt able to share their views in our assessment and planning processes, and 83% said our intervention had made a positive difference to their lives. And we continue to listen to those families who we are currently supporting and working with. We've also seen significant success in our Join Us on Our Journey recruitment campaign, our permanent social workforce rising from 29% in July 24 to 70% and continuing to increase in October 2025. Finally, given the significant focus on this, on the Council's budget today during this Cabinet, I would just like to take the opportunity to reflect on the strong financial performance of the Directorate, as reported earlier by my Cabinet colleagues, Councillor Stoddart. As a reminder and in summary, against the investment of £10.8 million in the 24-25 revenue budget, in that year, the Directorate delivered £2.5 million in savings. A further £3.9 million in savings are forecast to be delivered this year, with savings proposed for next year of £2.7 million. In addition, the Directorate delivered an underspend of £2.7 million last year. This totals £12.5 million in savings and underspend against that original investment of £10.8 million. So in conclusion, Cabinet, my recommendations are that you note the content of the Ofsted inspection report, and that you authorise the Corporate Director for Children and Young People in consultation with the Council's corporate leadership team and the partnership to lead the completion of Phase 3 of the improvement plan and the Ofsted Outcome Action Plan bringing this work together in a children's services business plan for 26-27 with future governance and monitoring in line with other council directorate processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Do I have any comments from Cabinet members? I've got some comments myself, but I'll save those to the end. This is my right. Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to just go on record to thank Tina and Councillor Powell for their dedication, their diligence, and I think from my position as Cabinet Member for Finance, it shows that actually you can deliver high value, high quality services and still make savings and cuts. So it's not easy, and we all around this table appreciate how much hard work has gone in. But I would like to thank them both, from me personally, and on behalf of the children of Herefordshire, for all that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddart. Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like I'm giving you a standing ovation. I mean, what you've achieved is incredible. But for me, what is remarkable is the combination of kind of a technical approach of GRIP, of KPIs, but with a heart. There's heart all the way through. It's about caring about those children, caring about the families, and relating. The turnaround has been remarkable. I'm hopeful that we're going to actually just be continuing. We're on a trajectory now which feels unstoppable. Confidence is very high. The turnaround in recruitment is amazing, and I think that sort of tells its own story. I can only congratulate you, thank you, both of you and the leader and the chief executive, for what is a remarkable outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swinglehurst. Any more comments? If not, before I go to group leaders, I would just like to, because Councillor Fagan has been very patiently waiting online. I apologise that this has been the item last on the agenda, so you've been extremely patient. But as Chair of Children's Scrutiny Committee and a key player in this improvement journey, I think it's only fair and right that we should hear from you, and I welcome your comments, Councillor Fagan.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lester, and of course congratulations to everybody involved in children's services, and that's the unbelievably dedicated workforce that now sort of makes up children's services in Herefordshire, headed by a very, very capable and committed director. So I mean, Herefordshire Children's Services been through a long and difficult journey, and to see this result as an outcome is absolutely fantastic. I remember there were days sitting on scrutiny committee when we challenged the pace of change, we challenged the change in culture, looking at quality assurance, along with the support from the LGA and our partners in Leeds, sort of looking for a more robust system, and then that was presented to us, and we could see that the service understood itself and it was challenging itself, and that those changes could be tracked. That was an exciting time. So just the families and the children and their families in Herefordshire that can now be supported, and we move forward. This is a great moment. Just to say that the Scrutiny Committee hasn't actually looked at this report yet and will be doing so next month, but we are currently undertaking a task and finish on early help in the county, what that means, and also the issue of the voice of children and young people in Herefordshire, the fact that we will be moving towards being a child-friendly county. That is a really exciting move, and that will give the children and young people a sort of place in decision making and determining what sort of future they can look forward to in Herefordshire as they become young adults. Obviously there are some areas of concern still in terms of sort of how we support those that are not in employment and training, and there's a lot for us to do as corporate parents to move forward to that. But just really to thank the workforce, to thank the leadership and great to see that stability in the workforce. And yeah, we look forward to that next step as we actually sort of move into finding our comfortable place in being good and heading towards outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fagan, for those comments. And I look forward to the scrutiny's participation in the Ofsted report and moving forward and how we can go to outstanding. Next. Right. Okay. Group leaders. Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. Very quickly, on behalf of the Lib Dem, just to add my congratulations and recognition of all the hard work that has gone into getting us to this stage. I think we have also, it will be very useful to us to remember that we were once inadequate and that we did let children and families down, and it must not happen again. And the way, to echo what Councillor Powell and Councillor Fagan have said, the key to that is to make sure that we continue to listen to the voices of the children and families, not just in the context of safeguarding, but in the context of every aspect of their lives. And we must respond to what we hear.
Thank you very much, Councillor Proctor. Group leaders, Councillor Hitchener, was that? Yep.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think wholehearted congratulations to Tina and to Councillor Powell for most fantastic work. Tremendously impressed by all you've done. I think it's a great outcome for the children of our county. They are the future, and their lives might have gone in one direction a few years ago, and now they will go in a totally different direction. So I think there's a real inheritance there, and I think I'd like to highlight the change in permanent workforce. I think that is so crucial. You quoted some figures, Councillor Powell. I think it makes the place a much more attractive place for people to come. They know they can come here and get well trained and looked after, and also people who are already here. Hopefully, they will improve, and I think that's a clue to continuing. I was quite pleased to see, Councillor Powell, the recommendation is here about working on a new children's services business plan. So that's the next step. That is what Councillor Proctor was saying. We mustn't fall back. We won't have the Children's Commissioner on our backs. We won't have the extra support which we might have had. I hope we can learn from the mistakes of the past. And move on, and we do. I think as a group, we look forward to reviewing that plan and seeing children continue to benefit and have a good future through living in Herefordshire. Thank you.
Councillor Simmons. Thank you, Councillor Hitchener.
Thank you, Leader. We are absolutely thrilled that the families in Herefordshire are now seeing positive change. It's been a long journey that was sort of instigated under the previous administration with the support from our Chief Executive, Paul Walker. That supertanker has seen rapid change in direction since Tina Russell has taken over, and with the support of Ivan Powell and Tony Fagan in the Scrutiny Committee and all our partners, it's been a really painful journey, but you have really accelerated that rate of change, and you deserve all credit for that, so thank you. We, are very pleased about Ofsted's positive judgment, but we do recognise that this is not the end of the journey, and that we need to make sure that we continue putting in the money and effort and time required to ensure that this journey continues and, as you say, go on to being outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you for all of those comments from group leaders and from Councillor Fagan and from Cabinet. I would just like to conclude by acknowledging what Councillor Simmons had said. The improvement journey did start under the last administration, and there was the goodwill there to improve things. And so I thank colleagues for that. But I have to pay particular tribute to the resolve of Paul Walker, our Chief Executive, who walked into a situation that any Chief Executive would be daunted by. But what did Paul do? He knuckled down, got serious about it, was absolutely resolved to sort this matter out. And so tribute to him in those really difficult times when we were facing a lot of criticism. So Paul has seen the distance and helped immeasurably to make this thing happen. But when I came to the situation as leader, if we all recall, we made this our number one priority to resolve. And I was absolutely determined that we as an administration and we as a council would accept our responsibilities and accept nothing less than improvement. And that's the resolve that we met right from the outset. It was just fortunate for me that I was able to appoint someone with the calibre of Councillor Powell, who was new to being a Herefordshire councillor. So it was his first gig and the most challenging one. But Ivan's professionalism, resolve, expertise and experience and cool under fire and his ability to do what I love to do, which is meet with parents, meet with families and address these matters head on. I've got, nothing but total admiration for Councillor Powell. And if I were to rate you, Councillor Powell, it would be outstanding. So thank you for that and for all that you have done. And in the line of duty, because you're so dedicated to being that cabinet member, you've also even become a grandfather in the process. So it just goes to show the dedication to duty, and congratulations on being referred to as Grandad. Of course, we needed the right approach, and we were extremely fortunate that Tina Russell joined us on this journey. And if I was to rate her as well, it would be another outstanding, goes without saying. Thank you for accepting the challenge. Again, extremely daunting challenge. And for you to be willing to accept the role is nothing short of outstanding. And the key point, because it's all about the staff, what you did was galvanize excellent teams, but you gave them the belief in themselves. And that is the key component that has really made this thing come together. And having that belief and having that confidence to do the right thing meant that we were really wanting to put children first. And that is the key element here that has really transformed things, so that we were in a confident place to listen to the voice of the child and make the right decisions for children and families. So yes, there's still much work to do, but I think we are so embedded in what we've done. Our good and outstanding levels will be business as usual. We'll have the business plan, not the improvement plan, which will mean this is the new normal, this is how good we will continue to be, and this is how we will continue to put children and families first in giving them the support they need. So the recommendations, Councillor Powell, that you've put before us, I'm happy to second. And Cabinet members, all in favour? Excellent. Right, okay, what a wonderful thing to close on. So I would like to thank everyone for their attendance and for their contributions. Thank you for scrutiny chairs for joining us for such a long meeting, and to all group leaders for their contributions that are meaningful and helpful with the debate. The next scheduled meeting of Cabinet is Thursday the 26th of March at 2:30 p.m, not 3 p.m. So with that noted, I wish you all a safe journey home, and I will now formally close the meeting. Thank you.